Turns out it takes more balls than you would imagine to get an Olympic gold medal in women's boxing. That's right, we're talking about the Algerian rags to riches story known as Imane Khelif. And a leaked medical report reveals male chromosomes, testicles, and most shockingly, parents that may have been blood relatives. So, grew up poor, inbred, and hits women. What are you going to tell me next? She's from the South? What's up, everybody? Ty Rivera here, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. Okay, so the Algerian boxer Imane Khelif, it turns out, is in fact male. I, for one, am shocked. 3 months ago, you could not have convinced me that this picture of femininity was not a natural born woman. And today, here I sit feeling like I've been played for a fool. Can we be serious for a second? We all have been saying that this person is clearly male. And I'm going to be honest, I feel two ways about this story. I had people that were mad at me when I originally talked about this, back when it was actually going on, and they were saying that I was being very unfair and that this person was born a woman and is a woman. And I was like, it doesn't really look like it. And the way this Italian female boxer explains it, it doesn't feel like it either. And so I personally feel vindicated because there were people in my comments that were telling me that I should put out a video apologizing. Even though on the video, I myself had said that they may be intersex or there might be something like that going on. This test pretty conclusively proves that it's not an intersex type thing. I stopped short of using the term man, and I probably will continue using she and her pronouns for this person. I'll explain to you guys why, but I want to read the article to you guys that Redux put out, which Redux, if you're not familiar, is a site that is about the protection of women and kids, basically. That's their mission statement. And they wrote an article that J.K. Rowling shared, and of course it just confirms what we all knew. But before we go any further, like, comment, and subscribe. I'm trying to get to 100,000 followers. Yesterday was a pretty good day as far as people subscribing. Thank you very much. But I'm not trying to make you guys mad on this particular video. I just think there may be a little more to the story that we might not necessarily pick up on as Americans and as non-Olympic athletes that I can't help but take into account when I look at the entirety of this story, not just the Olympic part. As far as the IOC goes, which is the Olympic Committee, and the Algerian Olympic officials, I think that they should be fried. I think their feet should be held to the fire. And I think it was a miscarriage of justice to every woman that was competing in the Olympics for women's boxing. So let me be very clear about that. But I'm just saying that for me personally, there might be room to have a little bit of sympathy or empathy. And I'm never sure if it's sympathy or empathy. And I've been through this before. So I'm just going to say I'll have sympathy over this situation possibly, because I think that it might require it if we're at all children of God. I try to be serious, but I'm just a dumbass. But I am serious about this, and I do hope that you guys will at least hear me out. Let me make my case. So here's the headline, and then I'll read the story. As we go along, I'll tell you guys why I think the way that I think, and hopefully you guys understand me. Okay, so headline: Algerian boxer Imane Khelif has XY chromosomes and testicles. French-Algerian medical report admits. So here we go. A shocking new development has emerged in the case of Algerian boxer Imane Khelif after a French journalist reportedly gained access to a damning medical report revealing Khelif has testicles. The news comes months after Khelif seized a gold medal in women's boxing at the Paris Olympics. The report was drafted in June of 2023 via a collaboration between the Kremlin-Bicêtre Hospital in Paris, France, and the Mohamed Lamine Debeguine Hospital in Algiers, Algeria. Drafted by expert endocrinologist Samaya Fadala and Jacques Young, the report reveals that Khelif is impacted by 5-alpha reductase deficiency, a disorder of sexual development that is only found in biological males. The genetic abnormality influences the normal development of a child's sex organs at birth. Male babies impacted by 5-alpha are often incorrectly assigned female due to the presence of deformed genitalia that sometimes takes on the appearance of a blind vaginal pouch. This disordered development typically becomes apparent by puberty, when 5-alpha adolescents begin to experience signs of masculinization, such as muscle growth, hair growth, and an absence of breast tissue development or menstruation. Without access to proper clinical examination, males with 5-alpha may incorrectly believe they are female into adulthood. And that's where I want to interject just a little bit, because I did research on Imane Khelif, and I ended up reading that they were actually raised really poor, so not a lot of money at all. And I would imagine that a person like this growing up in Algeria, which if you don't know, Algeria is all the way around very conservative, but then I had read where Imane had talked about the fact that they had grown up in a really conservative village. The word town wasn't used, or the word city. It was a village. So if you're growing up in a conservative village, you probably don't know the most about your body. And if you've just been told your entire life that you're female and that's what the doctor said you were, why would you have a reason to believe you are anything but female? And even though once I continue reading, you'll find out that they did have an enlarged clitoris that basically was a micro penis. I mean, I wouldn't imagine that a young girl growing up in conservative Algeria would probably what our religious parents would be the most comfortable asking her mother about whether or not her body looks the way that it should look or not. And depending on how conservative their family was, they may not have ever even gotten like a birds and the bees conversation with their parents. And I would imagine that if they live in any kind of healthy circumstance, it's not like Imane's parents were seeing her nude after being a baby, a toddler. So to me, it just seems like this leaves a little bit of room for maybe Imane herself didn't know that this was what was going on with her. I mean, it says without access to medical care that some people don't know into adulthood, so I could see that being the case. At the end of October, French journalist Jafar Iodia obtained a copy of a thorough physical examination that was conducted on Khelif in order to verify the presence of a disorder of sexual development. According to Iodia, the clinical report reveals that an MRI determined that Khelif had no uterus, but instead had internal testicles and a micropenis resembling an enlarged clitoris. A chromosomal test further confirmed that Khelif has an XY karyotype, while a hormone test found that Khelif had a testosterone level typical of males. Iodia also noted that the doctor suggested Khelif's parents may have been blood relatives. I don't know what things are like in Algeria, but I would imagine that if your parents are blood relatives and your parents, so procreating, that probably wouldn't make them the most educated on these types of matters either. So even the parents, up until they had these tests done, might have actually believed they just had an odd looking daughter or a masculine looking daughter, which I've had friends that were born female, have even had kids. So the fact that they are genetic females is not in question, but they do look very manly. So that's where I wonder if maybe Imane and her parents didn't really know what was going on until this happened, because let's go on and we'll find out a bit more. The report concludes by recommending Khelif be referred for surgical correction and hormone therapy to help him physically align with his self-perceived gender identity, and adds that psychological support would be required because the results had caused a very significant neuropsychiatric impact. I looked into neuropsychiatric impact, and that means that the person is dealing with depression, sleeplessness, other symptoms that mean your mental has really been affected, which that too leads me to believe that since the doctor is recommending that they basically move forward with SRS, so sex reassignment surgery, I would imagine that the doctor is probably sympathetic to the fact that this person has been led to believe their entire life that they are in fact female, because Imane Khelif is still only 25 25 years old. So if this was done in 2023, they would be 23 or 24. And could you imagine going 23 or 24 years of your life thinking that you were a particular sex and then finding out that you weren't? And especially as connected as some people get to what their sex is, like you've grown up this entire time thinking that you are a woman, thinking that you are a female, and by no choice of your own end up finding out that you are in fact transgender. And I'm not even trying to be silly about that, but this is one of these cases where it's kind of a reverse situation, and I don't even know that I could with good conscience blame the parents for this. It's like if it was sick parents that just wanted their son to be a daughter, I think that would be a one thing. But when I read to you what I've already read so far, and we know that doctors can mistakenly assign the wrong sex to people that suffer with this condition, then it might not have been anybody in their family's fault. Again, this has nothing to do with the boxing part. I'm not saying that any of this is a defense for any of that. I'm just saying that as far as treating this person as if they went into boxing knowing that this is what they were doing or that this was their intent, I don't necessarily know that I can fully say that I think that that's the case here. I would need to hear more about what's going on. Also, there are pictures of Imane as a child, and they did dress her as a girl. It seems like they thought she was a girl. It's also illegal to transition or be gay in Algeria, so I don't really imagine that that's what they were doing. Algeria is not playing when it comes to any kind of homosexuality or any of the related. The LGBTQ is not happening in Algeria, to the point where there was recently a raid on a gay wedding and they sent 2 of them to prison, and then another 42 guests of this suspected gay wedding ended up getting suspended prison sentences. So clearly they're not playing about this kind of stuff in Algeria, and I don't think that it was a case where they tried to transition Imane. I think they honestly thought they just had a daughter that looked more masculine than anything else, and then at a young age she got into boxing, and when life hands you lemons, you make lemonade, and now you've got this really great female boxer on your hands, and this could be your ticket out of the ghetto. So you ride it for all it's worth. And from the story that I read, Imane, when she was young, actually was so poor that she sold bread on the street, and she has funded her entire boxing career by raising money and doing things like selling bread and collecting plates, which I don't know how you collect plates and make money. I guess you collect them and sell them, but that's something that was a quote from her in a particular story. And again, I know some of you are going to be like, why aren't you saying he and him? And really it's because I think that if this has been basically her reality for the last 20 some years, and that's what she truly believed, and it was by no fault of her own and not at all a decision she made, and she was having to go against people telling her, because part of her story is that in Algeria boxing is considered to be a man's sport, and so even though she isn't a genetic female and didn't realize that she wasn't, she really did have to go through the struggles of being a woman and being a young woman in boxing. Now later on that turned out not to be the case, but that was the reality she was living. And if I'm correct in my thinking, she didn't realize she was doing that under any false pretense. She thought that this was her life, this was her struggle, this was her story. And it has to be extremely devastating to all of a sudden realize that you're not what you've thought you've been all along. And that's why I personally feel like I can, at the very least, even if this person never sees my video, be as nice and as compassionate as I possibly can, because I would imagine that they are in a tailspin. So I really do feel that at the very least, as a society, maybe it would be better for us to show a person like this some compassion when it comes to that particular part, and understand that there's a chance that some people really don't know what they're dealing with. And if they're told all along that this is just a medical condition that they have, but don't worry, you're still female, you're still a girl, you're still a woman, but you just have this medical condition. And when you're naive enough and sheltered enough and not educated enough to know any different, or you just accept this as the reality, okay, I've got a medical condition, but I'm still female. So that's good, right? And then it turns out that you're not actually female. And then where are you left at that point? This report coincides with an early admission by Khelif's coach, George Cazorla, that the Algerian boxer had been subjected to an assessment at the Kremlin-Bicêtre Hospital after being disqualified from women's boxing by the International Boxing Association in March 2023. In an interview from August, Cazorla tepidly conceded that the endocrinologist had determined there was a problem with Khelif's chromosomes at the time. Despite this fact, Cazorla insisted that Khelif should still be allowed to compete against females. And that's where I think the corruption probably starts, is the coach has this fighter on his hands that could be a golden ticket for him as well. And now you're the coach to an Olympic gold medalist boxer, and that's got to be worth something even in Algeria. So I think that maybe the coach probably helped to misdirect this whole situation and is probably a part of the problem and one of the people that should be held accountable in this situation. Further confirmation of the boxer's karyotype was given by Alan Abramson, an associate professor at the University of Southern California's Annenberg School for Communication and Journalism, who is a specialist in Olympic sports and member of the International Olympic Committee's press committee. In an August statement, Abramson said that he had personally viewed the results of the hotly contested chromosomal tests ordered by the IBA in 2022 and 2023, which concluded the boxer's DNA was that of a male consisting of XY chromosomes. The news of Khelif's leaked medical report comes after he won gold at the Paris Olympics in the women's 66 kilogram category. In collaboration with the Independent Council on Women's Sports Icons, Redux was the first outlet to break the news of Khelif's participation in women's boxing at Paris, raising alarm bells due to his previous disqualification from women's boxing by the IBA. The news sparked a firestorm of controversy, with the IBA coming out in opposition to the IOC's decision to allow biological males to box against women in Paris. During a press conference in August, the IBA repeatedly confirmed that Khelif had failed multiple chromosomal tests, but was unable to barred from releasing the results of those tests by the Algerian Olympic Committee. Speaking to Redux on this latest revelation, Icon's co-founder, Marcy Smith, slammed the IOC and the Algerian Olympic Committee for allowing Khelif to continue his journey to Paris gold despite being fully aware he was genetically male. Quote, "The IOC and the Algerian Olympic Committee are complicit in endorsing male violence against women under the guise of public entertainment on the world's largest sports stage," Smith said. My gay lisp really came out with all those S's, right? "They stood by as women were subjected to physical assault for spectacle, stripped of safety, fairness, and their lifetime achievements. All those involved must face swift and serious consequences." Smith adds that she believes Khelif should be stripped of his gold medal, but doubts any action will be taken to rectify the injustice. Quote, "We urge leaders in sports and governments worldwide to condemn the IOC and demand a public commitment to ensuring fair and safe sports for women from this day forward. This must never be allowed to happen again." And that part I do 100% agree with. I do definitely agree that more protections should be in place for women when it comes to sports, especially contact sports. If you just have a policy where you give everybody a chromosome test, which can be as simple as a cheek swab, then I don't really think that this should be an issue. And I don't think that it's anything that we should necessarily have to debate or be talking about. I do agree completely. The general public, as well as the different coaches and governing bodies and everybody that's involved with the Olympics, really just should put pressure on the Olympic Committee and just being like, yeah, this is an easy fix, and I don't know why you wouldn't take care of it other than political correctness. And that's where I think we need to draw a line, and that's why I think that it is important that something be done about this. But I just think when we know what we know about the athletes a lot of times in other countries and how they're kind of sheltered from even knowing, well, even if you think about it in terms of the United States, like there was that female gymnastics scandal with that coach that's spending the rest of his life in prison that was doing his dirt on the sneaks with the female gymnast, and this was in this country. And because they were young and they just thought they were supposed to trust trust him and that he was doing what he was supposed to be doing, they were getting R-worded and essayed for years and not realizing anything was going on. So to me, it's not that far-fetched to think that possibly Imane Khelif himself or herself didn't even realize they were maybe being lied to too. Because like I said, you could easily dismiss it to the person and just be like, look, trust us. We know what's going on. We deal with the doctors. You are definitely female. You have every right and every reason to be performing in this event, in this sport. This is your time to shine. And then, of course, Algeria knows that one, they're going to have egg on their face if at that point it's discovered that one of their athletes is in fact not the correct gender, which would mean they're trans or some sort of LGBTQ. I'm sure that's the way that the Algerian officials see it. So they decide to go the route of, let's just go ahead and get this one over. Let's just go ahead and make this one happen. Nobody will ever find out. And they could have found a way to quietly have her bow out. Who knows what they were going to do moving forward. But I really do believe that all of the officials, as far as the Algerian Olympic Committee goes, knew what was going on and just wanted to save face by not having a trans person represent them in the Olympics. And also the benefit of getting gold because you have an athlete that can possibly score a big win for your country. And who knows if there are going to be any kind of repercussions as far as from the government. It could be looked at as she and her family have now made the government look a fool, and now they're having to address something on a world stage that they didn't necessarily want to address to begin with. So I really am somewhat worried for their safety is also a part of it too. And I think that's part of the story that more people should maybe focus in on a little bit. To me, the Olympic part should be very cut and dry. That system just needs to change. But as far as making sure that this family isn't dealing with consequences, I think that too is something that we should at least kind of pay attention to. Even though I know a lot of people are going to be mad at Imane, and I see people already saying he's a cheater and he knew what was going on along, and maybe not. I personally, like I said, just need to hear more of the story. Anyway, let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. And if you want to see a video of me reacting to one of the most confusing non-binary people I have ever seen in my life, check out the video on your screen. As always, this has been Ty Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world.
They bought into his bullshit.